How's it going, everybody? I'm Ryan. He's Abby. We're the Expansion Bros, and Happy New Year, everybody! We are back with another episode, and yeah, the new year, same Sabres. New year, new Canucks. I don't like it as much. How you doing, Abby? How are things over there?
They're all right. You know, New Year excitement, but also New Year dread and New Year. Oh my God, what is happening? Can we please have a healthy defenseman?
Yeah, what your decor? I mean, we talked about it before the season. We've been talking about it like the entire podcast, basically. It's a weak decor. Especially when you don't have Hronek and Hughes.
Yeah.
But like you guys, how long is the ship going to be able to stay afloat before these guys come back?
Yeah, hopefully we saw good news today. If you looked at the Canucks, I think it was their Instagram, you saw practice pictures with the first frame was both Hughes and Pettersson standing together. So hopefully that means they're not out too long. But obviously, without Hughes and Hronek, this defensive core is significantly weaker. And I think this stint without Hughes really shows why Hughes should win the Hart. It is really the Vancouver Hughes sometimes. Vancouver Hughes plus goalies. This team is just floundering without him, and the sooner he's back and hopefully he can stay healthy, the better. And hopefully, I think they're looking at Hughes' status. I don't think he's out for too much longer based on that practice picture. I think he was week to week. So
the reports say that he's going to join the road trip, according to Jeff Patterson of Canucks Army.
Yeah, so I would think maybe we can look for at the latest, probably I think the Jets, which is Tuesday the 14th. Because that is the end of the road trip. But maybe if we're optimistic, we could even look for Friday against the Hurricanes. And I think the Canucks can afford to survive a game or two without him, but they just need to start, it's not even about them necessarily, because you look at the personnel, right? How are you supposed to expect Carson Soucy and Tyler Myers to be your top two defensemen or be your best defenseman? You just can't, right? These guys are situational four defensemen. When I mean four defensemen, I mean players who play on your second pairing and kind of play sheltered minutes compared to their partner. Number 4, number 5 defensemen who ideally, again, are on your bottom pairing and used in certain situations. So when you have to use them as your top defenseman, they're always going to be exposed. It's a lot like Vinny Desharnais. Vinny Desharnais is a fine number 6 defenseman. But if you play him higher than that, he tends to show his defensive flaws. And that goes for any player. There's plenty of players who are great in whatever role you put them, but if you put them on the first line and you put them on the top pairing, they're going to be exposed. And with the injuries, that's kind of what we've been forced to do. And at the same time, right, even with the personnel that we do have, they aren't necessarily being deployed properly. You look at someone like Erik Brannstrom, who's been scratched so much. And yes, Erik Brannstrom is a negative game score, but forget everyone else's game score is even worse. And when you have Quinn Hughes and Filip Hronek, two of your better puck-moving defensemen, well, sorry, not two of your better, two of amazing puck-moving defensemen,
Quinn Hughes
the best puck-moving defenseman in the league, you need to try to replace that, and to not use Erik Brannstrom is just incredible. It's just foolish, because Tyler Myers has basically been on the PP2 almost the whole year. Now is the head defenseman on the PP1. And the whole season, he has 9 points, 2 goals, 9 points. Erik Brannstrom, in 10 less games, has 3 goals, 1 less point. Something tells me the puck-moving defenseman on the power play will be more effective at driving offense than Tyler Myers, who I'm sure has a nice enough shot and all that. But when you're that big, I think Tyler Myers has been playing in the league for 15 years or something like that.
He's the last Buffalo Sabre to play a playoff game, so that should tell you something.
Exactly. He's 34 years old. He's a pretty heavy guy. He's in shape and all that. But like 15 years at like being that big, huh?
Can we pause? He's 34.
Yeah,
dude. I remember when I watched him win the Calder as a rookie. What sorry for like the crisis here that I feel old, but
right,
oh my God.
Anyone listening from Buffalo, if you guys had a midlife crisis, my apologies that I triggered it.
Yeah, he had 48 points his rookie season. You're throwing. I was going to say you're throwing it back to rookie in second year Tyler Myers, putting him on the power play, asking him to be a puck mover and a facilitator. I'm like, that's never really. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know what Tyler Myers' game is. He's an enigma to me, but he shouldn't be your power play quarterback on power play 1.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, like he's someone you throw on your PP too if you have an injury and it's like, okay, he'll hold it down well enough for a little stint. But this is just unacceptable. Like I understand, and a lot of the argument is, oh, the Canucks, other teams have leverage on them. They know they need a defenseman. Okay, we need a defenseman. Make the goddamn trade.
And here,
This
you know
team
what?
has playoff aspirations.
Yeah, and you know what? You want to talk about a team that has no leverage? Let's look at the Buffalo Sabres. And what do the Buffalo Sabres have? A glut of puck-moving defensemen. I mean, no team makes more sense to me for Bowen Byram than the Vancouver Canucks. You guys are a playoff aspiration team. You're in win now mode. You've got some players that I think the Sabres, right? You don't have futures to give. Well, you do have some, but you're not going to be just like, okay, we'll throw a bunch of future. Like, no, you've got rosterable players that are sitting the pine every night that would probably improve the Sabres middle six. I mean, we were talking before we hit record that Nils Hoglander, I mean, are you kidding me? I would absolutely put him on the second line in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
And I mean, obviously there's stuff to be ironed out, but I would love, like, if we move Byram to get Hoglander in return. The value, I don't know where you value it, right? I don't watch you guys enough. You don't watch us enough. So I don't know how we'd value it. Obviously, you would want more and I would want more, but we'll figure it out. But it's just the trade partner makes sense. And we'll get to more trade talk in a bit.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. And I think Hoglander, the problem with a little bit, but we're going to Hoglander here for a little bit. The problem with Hoglander is, last year he scored 24 even strength goals in very limited minutes, often on the fourth line. And then this year, look, I think he has 2 goals all year. It just seems like he's lost his confidence, and I think the old Hoglander is still there, but I think he complicates his game a little too much. He makes the extra pass that he doesn't need to. Sometimes they talk about making the extra pass, and it's a good thing. He makes that extra pass that you shouldn't be making. And I think simplifying his game will be easier if he was moved to a new situation where he hadn't just come off that thing, right? His fresh start, and he can kind of just play himself. And I think he can be an effective middle six forward and put up another 25-goal season for you guys, especially if you guys start giving him power play time and like have his thing. And if we're talking Byram for Hoglander, I would assume the Canucks would have to add more to that. As much as I love Hoglander, he's coming off a down season, or he's not coming off, he's on a down season.
You're selling low.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as far as Canucks prospects go, there's only 2 prospects that are off the table. As for me, it's Lekharmaki and Wallander. Outside of that, anyone who needs to go can go. You're talking Akuratu, you're talking Sawyer Minio, you're talking about any of these guys in the system, they can go, as far as I'm concerned, to get us a defenseman. I think someone like Bowen Byram is someone I would have pushed back on earlier, just because, again, it's another puck-moving defenseman. You already have Hronek, you already have Hughes. How many of them do you need? But at this point, we're starting to get a little desperate here, and we kind of just need someone who can do some basic defense, even if it's not the core part of their game. At this point, we can't have Gilliam frickin' Brisebois on our top pairing. Gilliam Brisebois, who does not belong on the top pairing of an AHL team, has played multiple games on the top pairing of the Vancouver Canucks. Hands up, how many people knew the name Gilliam Brisebois before he got called up? There's probably a chunk of Canucks fans that don't remember because he just sat in the AHL team and never had a chance of making this team. How many NHL games does Gilliam Brisebois have? I'm mad now. You know what, Ryan, you had your freaking rant 20, a couple episodes ago.
Before this season, 27.
That's 27 more than he should have had. Like, this is madness how they've allowed this to happen. This is a management team that's been considered smart, made savvy, safe moves. Last year, you went for Elias Lindholm, and I don't think Canucks fans are mad. Yes, we lost our OHL defenseman. Yes, we lost some prospects, and we lost a first-round pick, but you were going for the playoffs, and Elias Lindholm, easy trade partner. It just worked out. That's okay. It didn't work out. Like it would seem like the perfect little push for a playoffs. We also got Zadorov. That was a smart, savvy move. Even if we couldn't keep him, the prices paid for these pieces were appropriate, and it just made logical sense. How has nothing been done? How much are teams asking for? Are they asking for Pettersson for freaking like a bottom 6 defenseman? Like what are they asking for? There has to be a team that will give up a top 4 defenseman for Niels Höglander, a prospect, and a pick. There just has to be.
You know what? I know your issue. It's
What's
you don't have palm trees and you have taxes.
that?
That's the issue. It's what it all comes back to.
Yeah.
No, but I honestly think like it's kind of funny because, we obviously look at each other's team so much, but the Sabres and Canucks almost make too much sense as trade partners. And I know Vancouver fans, you're not going to want to hear this and you're not going to like what I have to say, but Elias Pettersson is the perfect and really the only target for the Buffalo Sabres if they want to get a difference maker who's played in the league, who is amazing, and where there's smoke, there's fire. And sure, one of the multiple outcomes that we talked about, or that Elliot Friedman talked about, is neither of them get moved, but there's also the possibility that one of them gets moved. And with no trade protection, you got to think Pettersson, who's making more, would probably be the guy that you lean to, right? He had that couple successful seasons a few years ago, but it's been a minute since we've seen that Petey really show up. And in time and time again, when I watch the Canucks, who's the one making the play that wins the game? It's more often JT Miller than I'm seeing Elias Pettersson. Now, the last season I saw some Pettersson moments, but this season I feel like it's been more Miller. So, I'm thinking Pettersson, Höglander, get rid of two guys that are just kind of sitting there. And well, Pettersson isn't sitting there, but there's not warm and fuzzies in the locker room, and get Cousins and Byram and maybe like another prospect like an Isaac Rosen or something like that. So not only do you have a center, which is something Vancouver's been reportedly looking for in Dylan Cousins, you get a defenseman who can play anywhere on your defensive pairings, right? When Hughes is back, he can play with Hughes. He can play at PP2. He can play in the middle pairing. When Hronik's back, right, then you have three really good defensemen. Plus, you've got an ascending offensive-minded center in Cousins, and you've got more cap space. So, I mean, you work out the details, but it just, to me, it just feels like it makes sense, which is why it won't happen.
Yeah, and I think like if you look at what the Sabres have to offer, even if they're not my favorite pieces, I would much rather trade with the Sabres than the other rumors I've been hearing. Other rumors have included JT Miller to the Rangers, and God forbid we acquire Mika Zibanejad, I will stop cheering for this team. If we get Mika Zibanejad and like, who's that defenseman they've been pitching? There's that Lindgren or something.
Ryan Lindgren or Keandre Miller.
Either of them, man. I will stop cheering for this team. I liked Keandre Miller a couple of years ago. He just hasn't felt like the same defenseman. He's got some offensive upside, but he's not good defensively. Lindgren's even freaking worse. And we're gonna go trade, these like elite centers for freaking Mika Zibanejad. I will stop cheering for this team. I will not burn my sweaters because I have many great memories. But I will give up on this team. And I will give up on this management team. If we trade with the New York Rangers and we do not get back the piece Alexei Lafreniere, which is the only piece I have any interest in at all on that team since they traded away Capo Caco, there's just nothing else to be had from that team. If Alexis Lafreniere is not part of that deal, I don't ever want to see the New York Rangers logo with the Canucks logo. I don't even care if they're changing 7th round picks with each other. I don't want to see the goddamn Rangers logo in the same trade as a Canucks logo. No chance. So, like you said, looking at Cousins and these guys, and it's all fine and dandy. I think ultimately, like, if we're trading for just Cousins, that's a problem. We need defensemen. It would have to be a package deal, whether it's Höglander for Byram, or whether you're using Pettersson as the big piece to get Cousins and Byram. Whatever you're doing, you have to get defensive help. You just have to. They're floundering out there, and Tucker refuses to play Brandstrom. And even if he did play Brandstrom, how much is Brandstrom going to help a team with no top 4 defensemen on it?
And again, we're sitting Henry Yokiharu. God bless you if you trade for Henry Yokiharu, but he's probably better than Brisebois, I'd have to guess. So
put some money down.
I got the bar on the floor, but it's like there's just, I don't know why. It's just, for whatever reason, for God bless the podcast for this, because it just makes too much sense. And we've done a deal before with Bloom for for Stillman. That was a little warm up. That was an appetizer. That was one of those hors d'oeuvres. You grabbed a little tomato soup shooter with a little grilled cheese on top, right? And let's get the main course, right? I want to see something, right? And we'll just kind of blend this episode, but a little bit less of Canucks than Sabres, just because there's not much to talk about with the Sabres, guys. The season is effectively over. Had they beaten Colorado, they probably rode momentum into the Vegas game, and even if they picked up a point against Vegas, they had just previously lost to Dallas, but obviously Dallas is a really good team. You had the Avalanche, you had them until you blew multiple multi-goal leads in the third period. You got up 4 goals in the third period. You can't do that. Right? You were up 3-0 at one point. You were up 5-3 with just a few minutes left in the game, and you allowed 2 goals at 6-on-5. You just can't do that. And that's what I'm saying. Like, at this point, I just want change. And it's not necessarily change for the sake of change, but I want change that is going to be impactful. Change that's going to make a difference. I want something to happen so that I can feel something again when I look at the Buffalo Sabres, because I can't just keep sitting here and watch this team do the same thing over and over and over again with these same players, this core of young guns that we've had for the last 3 or 4 years. And it's Tage and Tuck and Cousins and Quinn and Peterka and Dahlin and Power. And it's like, that's not a cup-winning core by any stretch, but let alone a playoff core.
No, I totally agree. And you know what? That's one thing the Canucks and the Sabres have in common is there's just a ton of talent on both these teams, and it's not translating right now. Yes, the Canucks have a positive record, but they should be doing so much better. You have JT Miller on this team. You have Jake DeBrusk who's been a hot goal scorer. You have Brock Besser. You have Connor Garland who can move up and down. You have Elias Pettersson. You have Quinn Hughes. You have Thatcher Demko. You have Philip Hronek. These are all strong
Maybe
players.
Thatcher Demko. If the poor guy can stay healthy, dude, I feel so bad, right? Like, I love Demko, but oh man, this past 12 months has been brutal. Yeah.
And there's always that worry too. It's like it's like you just got punched in the face, and you've spent 3 months getting better, and now your nose is finally healed. And then as you're leaving, boom! A nice little gut punch to you as well, right before, because
on your way out of the hospital.
Yeah. Oh, it's just you always heard like, oh no, he might not be the same goalie, like you don't know how he's gonna be, and he comes back and he's playing great. He's playing freaking great. And just to be out again, like, oh my gosh, such a horrible gut punch. And again, I don't think Canucks fan this season would be gone already. We'd be as bad as the Sabres were it not for freaking Kevin Lankinen.
Which is crazy considering your team is far more talented and experienced than ours.
Just took Edmonton to 7 last year, and you know what? It's just this team. I feel like it's historical. This team just doesn't get defensemen when they need them. It was their weakness in 2010-11. It's been their weakness throughout their history as a franchises. Again, before Quinn Hughes, Alex Edler was our best defenseman ever. Before Alex Edler, I guess you could say it was Ed Jovanovski, who again was a great defenseman, but just not a long tenure here. And before that, who was their best defenseman? Jyrki Lumme? Good defenseman, but like, if you ask the average fan, are they going to know who the hell Jyrki Lumme is? Are they even going to know who Ed Jovanovski is?
Then.
Exactly, right? Like, you want your best defenseman to be someone who, like, a medium to slightly more than casual, hockey fan would know. Like, you go ask who is Boston's best defenseman? Everyone knows Bobby Orr.
Oh, of all time. Sorry, I thought you meant like currently.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to start that debate. God, no. I'm. Oh my God! I'm not about to throw his name in the ring.
No, you'll probably hear most people say Bobby Orr. Probably hear some people say like Chara, right? So you make some of those arguments, but you're gonna get a fairly household name. You go ask who the Capitals' best defenseman ever was. You'll probably get like Brian Leach. You'll probably get like John Carlson.
I was gonna say this is one that I would throw John Carlson in the ring for.
Yeah. You can look at Ottawa. Eric Carlson.
Oh yeah.
Like there's enough household names. You ask anyone who freaking the Jovanovski is, maybe if they were around during the West Coast Express era, but he just wasn't around long. People are Alex Edler was. He was a fine defenseman, but he was by no means an elite defenseman for an extended period of time. Quinn Hughes, yes, over time, I think he's already the fucking best defenseman the Canucks have ever had. And he's only had since we drafted him. He's only been around 7 seasons. Like, this guy has had such an impact on this team, and it shows both how great Quinn Hughes is and how bad the Canucks track record is. You listen to most of these, right? Like, I know Ryan joked about, making an argument for Charlie McAvoy there for a second. But you know what? Maybe there are people who make an argument about Char. You go through most teams' best defensemen, and unless it's like, their best defenseman is so incredible, you usually have a debate, or you hear about like, oh, but this guy's second. With us, you're struggling to come up with number 2, number 3, because the Canucks just have a history of not getting the defensemen they need to back up good forward cores, right? Well, even think about 2010. You had so many great forwards. You had the Sedins, you had Burrows, you had Kessler, you had this good stack of forwards who all had the offensive firepower, and you had one of the greatest goaltenders of all time in Roberto Luongo. And you just didn't have the defenseman. Yes, you had Kevin Bieksa, but if you're trying to sit here and argue with me that Kevin Bieksa and Jason Garrison and Keith Ballard and Christian Ehrhoff are like the greatest defensemen ever, or could back up a forward core of that caliber, we're arguing against a wall. And it's the same thing now. Yes, you finally, you have this good offensive forward core, but when Hughes and Hronek are out, you have bums on this team.
Well, and that's, I think, one of the routinely hard things to do in the NHL is find quality defensive depth. And it's one of the things that like is so frustrating as a Sabres fan, because their decor is not perfect. They've got Power, Dahlin, and Byram. That is that is a core that you can just solidify and build around. And it goes back to the roster building of this team. And, it's something I wanted to touch on. We can touch on it in a moment, but looking back at the Canucks, it's funny that you mentioned that you guys haven't found any good defensemen to pair with your forwards. And I'm like, we haven't found any good forwards to pair with our defensemen for like our franchise's history. Like, when you think about the Sabres, you don't think about elite forwards. You don't think about amazing goal scorers setting the world alight. Now, I know we had Gilbert Perreault back when, 1970s, but I'm talking, since
Afinogenov.
Yeah, Maxim Afinogenov was good, but he was never a top guy in the league. And then we finally got that with Jack Eichel, and we ran him out of town. Cool guys. But when you think about the Buffalo Sabres, you think about Ryan Miller, Dominic Hasek. You think about and there's more, right? I don't want to slight anybody, but just the two that come right to my mind are like leading an all-time win stats and two of the best goalies to ever play the game, right? So the Sabres always had some elite goalie, but they never put the team in front of them. I had an argument the other day on New Year's Day about what team was better, the 06 Sabres or the 99 Sabres. I vehemently say 06 Sabres. I think I'm right. I think
agree.
It's more talented, but the 99 Sabres, Hasek dragged them to the cup. So anyway, we'll have that debate later, but it's just, I don't know what the issue is. I don't know what kind of big brain thinking there are in front offices and whatnot, but when we're sitting here and it's like, oh, it's so easy, you just need to find this, and obviously you got to make the deal, and it's harder to make the deal, and there's a lot involved. Real lives and real people and real money are all involved here, and it's not just as easy as going on Shell and hitting fine trade. But you look at the Sabres, and they don't have complementary players for each other. Like the D. We got three of pretty similar players. Now, Dahlin is a two-way elite superstar, a top defenseman in the league. And if he wasn't in Buffalo, he'd be argued in the top 5 and probably consistently in the Norris conversation. You've got Owen Power, who is young and is learning and is growing and a good puck mover. And you got Bowen Byram, who's this great offensive skating talent. But they all have their flaws, right? And you need to find somebody to pair with them that balances out those flaws. And this is where it comes back to roster construction. There's just no balance on the Sabres team. And we'll stick with the Canucks for a second because I know I just hijacked that. But for you guys, I think your forward lines, they are pretty well built. Now, obviously, injuries have really, hurt that with Pettersson not being able to slide in, so things get shifted. But especially on the blue line, like you had Hughes and Hronek, who can play almost half of the hockey game. And then, you got Myers and Soucy and those guys and Juleson and Desharnais, like they're kind of all back in their appropriate role. But, Myers and Soucy are not great middle pairing defensemen, right? So
Absolutely.
that's, I think, where the ball was dropped is they maybe believed too much in what they saw last year with
Yeah.
Soucy and Myers being like, hey, middle pairing set, we got those guys. It's like, nah, I would call them both 4.5 defensemen, right?
Yeah,
Maybe a
absolutely.
4, maybe a 5, but not a 3. And I think that's where a guy like Byram slots into your roster just fine. I know we're talking about like the trades already happened, but it just makes too much sense because Byram is the perfect 3 for Vancouver.
Mm.
And when Hughes and Hronik are down, he's a fine 1 for. He's a much better power play 1 quarterback than Myers. He's a much better number 1 left D than Brisebois. I mean,
Yeah.
like
There's no
it's
debate
just
there.
and it's out there, right? You call the Sabres. The Sabres, I mean, Kevin Adams has to be feeling some kind of pressure. I know Terry Pegula said the answer's in the room. I don't know what room it was. I don't know if the room is Earth. It might be because the answer's out there somewhere. I actually don't think it is. I don't even think their answer's on Earth because nobody knows what the answer for the Sabres is. But oh man, it's just like it makes so much sense. It's a team. Go kick them while they're down. Rutherford, Alvin, kick them while they're down. Go get Byram. Do it.
Do the thing.
Yes, it's a match made in heaven. And if you want to throw Pedersen in, we'll throw a Cousins in too. Why not?
Hey, this isn't Alabama. We don't want your cousin, okay? No, I agree. I think, like you said, our problems kind of like not mirror each other. It's the opposite, you know. I guess it is mirror because you see the opposite side in the mirror. So I think we should help each other out here. But
Help me
but
help you.
regardless, help me help you help me. No, and I think this is where the struggle is as well, and what I think is just so frustrating, right? Is you look at, like you said, like in your earlier little spiel, there's just so much talent on both these rosters. You know, like I take a look at the talent on the Canucks, especially, but even the Sabres, and you put them up against some of these teams that are higher than them in the standings, and it's just like this should be working. But when you talk about complementary pieces, right, and this is one of the reasons I lean away from trading away someone like JT Miller. Brock Besser and JT Miller are very complementary to each other. Yes, I think Brock can work on any line, but I feel like they do their best work together. Um, you look at Petey and DeBrusque, and I feel like they've started developing chemistry this year while Petey was healthy. There's lots of like little players like Joshua and Garland who worked together at a time. I know Joshua still had a bit of a tough time recovering from everything, but it just feels like everything there is working. And you look at the Sabres too. A lot of these guys have been around for a while. Like Tuck's been around for a bit now. Thompson's been around for a bit now. Cousins has been around for a bit. Some of these players, let me just look at the rest of this.
Quinn, Cousins, Peterka,
Turka, yeah.
Thompson, Tuck, Darlene,
Darlene,
Samuelson, Byram.
These guys should be starting to develop chemistry by now. They should be able to work together by now. They should be able to, in the Canucks case, go through the season without having locker room issues, right? These guys have been together for so long now. So it's just puzzling and confusing, and it just hurts a little bit when it's like, why isn't this working? Like you said, right? You said like, the answer for the Sabres isn't on this earth. Hopefully somewhere in the galaxy, but it's not on this earth. I'm starting to feel that way with the Canucks. Like it's not, the season doesn't untenable. Maybe the solution is as simple as, oh, Hronek's healthy, we're fine now, and everything's kumbaya in 2 months, right? But I don't know. It's just it's also infuriating as a fan again, right? Like even if we're not talking about like Sabres in particular, right? You have the Flames who look like they're looking to unload Rasmus Anderson. You look at the Penguins who are likely looking to unload Marcus Pettersson. You look at all these teams. It feels like there is no lack of abundance of top 4 defensemen that can go out and be acquired, and just the fact that the president and the GM are just watching them flounder and doing nothing about it is what's so infuriating as a fan. We haven't heard these rumors. The only rumors we've heard is that Miller and Pettersson are looking to be moved out, and they're looking at centers. Nobody here is asking for a center. Nobody wants a center. We're not asking for this. We're asking for a bloody defenseman because we're playing Guillaume Brisebois on the top pairing. Please go trade for a top 4 defenseman. If we had a top 4 defenseman last year, in addition to what we had, we might have been in the Cup Finals.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they're seeing. I don't know if they're using analytics, right? I can't tell if it's the old boys club eye test or if it's the new age analytics say this. It's like, you got to marry the two, first of all.
Yeah,
but I don't know what it is that they see, because I just look at the team sheet. I look at the lineup. I don't see it on the blue line, and we didn't see it coming into the season. And I know cap is difficult, and sometimes you miss out on things that you wanted, but I mean, it's so right. Like we're in the same boat. It's amazing. And I am sorry you jumped in the rowboat with me, but at least you're in a wild card spot, buddy.
Jumped in from the cruise to the freaking rowboat like, oh, this looks comfortable.
Well, no, you jumped in just in a speedboat next to us. You went off the cruise and you actually had to do your own work and drive the boat, but at least you're in a wild card spot. But no, point still stands. I just want to see them do something. That's what I was saying that earlier. Like, I got tickets to tomorrow night's game. I can't wait to see what lines Lindy rolls out, and Tage and Tucker together, and Cousins and Quinn are together, and Matthias Samuelson's playing top 4 minutes and making panic mistakes. It's like, I can't keep watching the same nonsense over and over and feel anything anymore. It's just, I put out a tweet on my personal Twitter, and it's just like, the Colorado Avalanche dunked on the Sabres. First of all, that's pathetic. Colorado, be better. Like, yeah. I mean, we blew a 4-0.
Not down.
Yeah, right? Like, that, you're reaching way down there, buddy, to really knock us in the teeth, huh? And we play twice a year, and we were up 4-0 and 3-0. Yes, we lost both of those games. We had a sizable lead at one point. So, and they were saying, like, oh, you're new owner of the Buffalo Sabres, and it was a picture of Devin Tays. And literally, I went to the replies, and it's Sabres fans, like, saying, will he spend at the cap? Please, we need somebody new. Like, thank you for saving us from Terry Pagula, and like, I will gladly accept it. So like, we're getting roasted, and we're like, yes, please. Like, this is accurate. I want this. And it's just like, it's just spite and apathy, like, mixed together. Because like, they hate the team, but they don't have the energy to hate the team, and it's our team at the same time. So it's just all this kind of terrible state for a fan base, and it's hard to, like, oh god. Logging on to record this for tonight, man, it was tough, because there has been zero energy for the Sabres, and they'll win one game, will be, oh yeah, and then they'll lose in horrific fashion again. Actually, it's just typical fashion, typical Buffalo. I mean, like, at some point something's got to give, right? Tage Thompson and Rasmus Dahlin are a bona fide 1C and 1D. They're two elite players in the NHL by whatever metric you look at. Like, you look at any kind of analytics or ranking or like WAR or whatever you want to. Yeah, eye test. Like, those two guys are studs. So put a team around them. Go make the trades. Like, I'm done waiting for Isaac Rosen to develop. Is he the same? Like, I don't care if Isaac Rosen turns out to be good. Go get me somebody good yesterday and today. Like, Jason Zucker. Holy crap, they got Jason Zucker, and he's insane. Now, this is not going to happen.
Did not see that coming.
This is, yeah. I thought he was going to be good. I was very happy about it. I'm like, he's exactly the kind of player they needed. But like, at the same time, didn't expect him to have 31 points in 40 games and be the number one forward on the Sabres. He's not the number one forward on the Sabres, but oh yeah. It's just, Canucks fans, you guys have hopes of the cup, right? After last season, and then coming into this season, and you're still in a playoff spot. But like we just had hopes of making the playoffs, and I think we're further away than you are, because once you're in, who knows? Demko comes back and gets incredibly hot and whatever. The Sabres, I don't know, man. I don't want to have like a what's more depressing right now. I'd much rather be you. But and I think you would agree with me on that one.
You know what? I just thought of this actually as you were talking about it, and this situation actually reminds me of a bit. You guys getting Jason Zucker in free agency, and him doing better than you expected, but the team still generally being miserable. It actually reminds me of something from a different sport. I want to cast you back, Mr. Ryan, to the days when the New York Knicks were supposed to get Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and instead they got Julius Randle. Now, Julius Randle turned out to be an all-star. And if you look at where the New York Knicks are now, they are thriving with a new star who, again, was signed and thought to be a fine forward in guard in Jalen Brunson. But he turned out to be the real piece they needed, and now they're seem like what's going to be a perennial playoff contender. So it's a bit of an odd comparison, as again, it's a bit apples to oranges. But you look at an owner that meddles in affairs, James Dolan, Terry Pagula. You look at the aspirations of landing big free agents and missing, right? There were plenty of big free agents in the summer. Sabres got none of them. But they did get another guy who was extremely disappointing relative to who they would have wanted to land. And said guy is performing very well in the city. The city is depressed and hasn't gone to the playoffs forever. quite a few parallels there. So if you
But
guys want to give
I missed the part where we become a perennial playoff contender. Can you skip to
so
that part of the story?
yeah, so what I'm saying is maybe you guys give a little call over, see what changes not the Rangers, the Knicks made to get to this point, and I think again, it feels like the Knicks got good out of nowhere. It's just Julius Randle was good, and then they got Jalen Brunson and signed him, and they made the right move. So I think, and I hate to be this hopium copium guy, as this season, like you said, this season is over, right? But I think it just takes that one right signing now. You guys have the little basics that you need. You guys have everything, right? If you're following the New York Knicks train, all it's going to take is one of the right signings and then making a couple of the right moves afterwards, and you're going to be there. Now I know
Uh,
this is the if you told a New York Knicks fan they'd be as good as they were 5 years ago, they would have been saying the same thing. It'd be like we were supposed to get Kyrie and Kevin Durant, and we got Julius Randle. And there's very funny segments on ESPN with
and
Stephen
they
A. Smith
drafted
reacting
R.J.
to this.
Barrett, who was supposed to be good and was not.
Now plays for the Raptors.
Yep, that shows you how good he is.
Yeah, yeah. So again, lots of parallels with and again some great drafted players, some not so great drafted players. I don't know. I'm just trying to give you some hopium right now. There is some parallels there.
I appreciate the effort, but at this point, I don't have any. They're broken. The receptors or the buckets or whatever you want to call it for hopium, it doesn't exist over here. Because I'm like I said, I until I see something significant change. Right? You mentioned they got a guy that turned into an all-star. I love Jason Zucker, but I mean, he may as well be the Sabres all-star this year. I don't know who they're going to vote in. It's probably going to be Tage because Tage has been having a really good season. Obviously, points. I mean, Zucker's 2 points behind Tage for the most points on the team. So
that's what I'm saying. He might end up becoming an all-star. That's what I'm saying. The parallel is starting a little closer and closer. So if you guys can parallel the past, maybe you can parallel the future.
and it's one of those things we would talk in August and being like, I can't wait to watch Jason Zucker play in the playoffs and the monkey's paw curled because he's going to get moved to a playoff team because, well, why wouldn't you if you're Buffalo, right? I would love to bring him back, but like he's 33 years old right now. He's having a great season on a terrible team. Move him because next season he probably won't have a similar season. So you move him now. We're at the bottom of the NHL, so just do it. Get what you can for him. So he's another guy that like I'm sure Vancouver is going to be in on Jason Zucker because they need forwards. Sarcasm. You guys don't need forwards.
We could use a top six winger. I'd like so shoot with how Zucker's playing. Maybe and it's also like you also as a management now, right? I always wonder about the dynamics between management and head coaches. How much are management acquiring guys that talk at legs? Because you look at people like Vinny Desharnais and Derek Forbort, and we looked at the acquisition of them in the summer, and it feels like they really should have only gotten one of them. I don't know why they went out and got two of them. Especially when you had so many depth defensemen in the first place, right? You kept Juleson, you kept Friedman, you have Susie, Myers. You have all these guys who are supposed to be bottom pairings. It really feels like they have 4 or 5 bottom pairing defensemen on this team and no top 4 defensemen. You just have Hronek and Hughes are supposed to be in a top pairing and just no one in the middle. So it just didn't make much sense to go out and get all these top 6 defensemen, of which, Desharnais has another year on his contract. It just didn't make sense to do this. I think Myers has 2 more years. Susie has 1 more year. When you really, really needed to get that top 4 defenseman. And it might have just been, like you said, that they were looking at last year and said, like, oh, look how good Tyler Myers played. Oh, look how good Susie played. Let's look at this. But it could also be that that's how Tocchet saw it rather than the management, and the management goes off what Tocchet saws. And Tocchet is an old school coach, so he's one of those guys who likes big, physical, hulking people. So I wonder if how much of this problem is Tocchet in terms of, and again, like you mentioned earlier, right? I've seen some Canucks fans completely turning on Tocchet, calling him a bad coach. He did just win the Jack Adams, so I'd probably hold off on doing that. And I think he is a good coach, right?
So
like
did
he
Lindy
did
Ruff.
turn this around.
Who was it? Oh God, Dan Bilesma won the Jack Adams too. So yeah.
To clarify, won the Jack Adams last year, not like years in the past, to be clear, but last year. And I know even that's not really a coaching. I feel like not just in hockey but in all sports is becoming a more and more volatile thing. It's we've seen it in football. You're a coach for a year, it didn't work out. All right, bye. I feel like again, hockey is one of those places where things are more stable. Like general managers, especially, usually have it more stable than coaches. Um, but you know, there's something there, like you said, right? He got this team playing well, and you have to figure out: is this the coach? Is this the GM? Is this just the mojo? Because the vibes are off as well, right? But how much are you going to blame the locker room? Because if you look at the locker room, right, and you look at Hughes and Miller's reactions at this point, I feel like it's not affecting the locker room anymore because they're tired of it and they're trying to push it aside. And whether it's that it was brought back to the media that forced them to try and squash the beef or whatever, it feels like they're just not publicly arguing anymore. Maybe it's because Pedersen isn't in anymore. Maybe it's just because they have a tighter lock on the locker room now. But it feels like that's not the issue. If it was an issue for a little bit, it was an issue. But I don't think it's fair to blame this season on locker room issues. It's clearly I think the fault lies somewhere else.
Yeah, I think, and I've been talking about this the last couple of weeks, is like I keep looking at your stats from an analytics perspective, and you guys are awfully close to where the Sabres are as far as analytics. And I'm like,
Starting to regress to the mean.
that doesn't really feel like where you want to be. I mean, thankfully, you guys have the talent and probably good enough coaching to win the games that the Sabres aren't winning. I believe I saw the Sabres are 1-5 in 1-goal games, which is not great. Situational. Yeah, the Sabres are 1-5 in 1-goal games. Oh yeah, here's some fun stats for you. When the opponent scores first, the Sabres are 4-13.
Oh,
So
I wouldn't expect that to be a positive number, but still, that's rough.
yeah, I mean, I don't expect it to be positive, but to put it in perspective, when the opponent scores first, Vancouver's 11-8-2.
That's a little better. That's close to 500.
Yeah,
That's
and when you guys
above.
score first, you're 7-4-6. So you are
That's
getting
a far worse number. Oh my god, we're scoring first and we're losing more than we're winning.
well, you're getting a point, right? You've got what? Is that 20
we're
points?
losing the game. It's not overtime tie. It's overtime loss.
Yeah, okay, but you still got the point, which is why you're in the wild card spot where you are. If the Sabres were 7-4-6 or 4-7-6 or something like that, when the opponent scored first, rather than whatever the heck we were. Oh god, I gotta pull it up again. Oh, why am I? I'm trying to sort by player stats. I'm not gonna find anybody from the Sabres at the top of the NHL in player stats. Situationally, yeah, they're 4-13 when the opponent scores first. The Sabres are 10-8-5 when they do score first. So still losing more than they're winning, but you've got what, 25 out of a possible 46 points. That's not good. That's not good at all. You guys have a 10 plus 7. This is 34. So you guys have 20 out of a possible, or 19 out of a possible 34. So not great, but still above 500 when scoring first. So, like I said, you guys have that veteran, that mindset, that mentality, that coaching, that you get through this kind of thing. And that's why I keep saying you guys are going to regress to the mean, but like I said, you guys are way too close to the Sabres. So I think fundamentally there's a little bit of tweaking that needs to be done at the roster, and you would like to see that happen sooner rather than later. And remember, last year's Elias Lindholm trade came much earlier than the deadline, much earlier than many people expected it to come. So I think a move might be, I don't know if they're going to wait to see when Hronek and Hughes come back and Pedersen comes back, we get healthy, what are we going to look like? Because I feel like we haven't gotten to see what the Vancouver Canucks that they envision for 24-25 looks like just yet.
Yeah, but I think the only problem we're going to have then is, do we have too much of a good thing? Oh no, we have an extra top 4 defenseman. Oh, boo-hoo. Oh my goodness. Oh no. And I understand, right? If we have to give up a big piece, right, in those kinds of deals, right? Like, what I'm talking about is if we did like a simple trade for Marcus Pedersen, trade for Bowen Byram, trade for whoever, right? And you didn't use one of the big pieces, like you didn't trade away a Miller or a Hughes in that deal. If you acquire one of those defensemen,
I mean Pedersen.
Sorry. Yes,
I was like, I will take Hughes.
If we trade Hughes, I give up on this team. I'll never cheer for them again. I'll find another team to cheer for.
Come to Buffalo. I mean, there's plenty of space on the bandwagon.
You know what? This is now on video. If the Canucks trade Quinn Hughes for any reason this season, I will become a Buffalo Sabres fan and abandon my Canucks fandom.
That is such a narrow probability.
Video. It's a narrow probability, but you know what? It's not zero. Technically, it can happen.
Technically not zero. Speaking of zero, sorry, I got another fun stat for you.
Okay.
The Canucks, when they're trailing after 2 periods, are 10-3.
See, that logically makes sense, but you would hope they show more fight back than that.
The Sabres are at least 2-15.
Oh no, we're worse than you guys. Oh no. Oh
I'm,
no, that's a really bad sign.
I mean, if it makes you feel any better, we've been trailing heading into the third period more than you have. We've had 17 times. You were only 13. So,
Still
but
not a good number.
the good
Last year, I
news
think
is you
we had
guys
more
closed
fight
it
back.
out. Yeah, when you're leading or tied after two, you are 18-2-5. You've only lost twice when you were not losing going into the third. Sorry, I phrased that terribly.
No, you didn't phrase that terribly. You phrased that properly. And just thinking about it is funny. It's like, oh yeah, when you don't lose, you win.
Dude, timeout. Do you want to know what last year's Vancouver Canucks record was when leading after two?
Please do.
42-1-4.
Oh my god.
You guys
Oh,
closed shit down when you
take me
had the
back to
lead going
last
into the
year,
third.
please. Take me back to
I
2024.
mean, this year you're 13-0-5, and I think that kind of speaks to no Demko, right? He
Mhm.
probably saves that one or two goals that are happening, that leads to overtime, and then you guys just don't win in overtime.
Yeah. And I think again, like you look at that defensive core, it was locked up a lot better, right? You had Zadorov still on that defensive core. You had, for the first part of that season, Ian Cole was playing pretty well as well. You had just a stronger defensive presence, right? And right now we're struggling to find defensemen to play in the top four, let alone the top two. Um, so it's yes, it definitely. I think Demko has an effect, but also again, the forwards aren't clicking like they were. Our PDO was off the chart for the first half of that season, and our defensive core was just stronger. So I think all three aspects of the game plus luck all are just reverse of last year for sure, and those are all contributing factors.
And I think, the team is still good. You still have the elite talent. I think you still have a good coach. I still think you can make a run at it. I think it's get healthy and acquire a piece. And honestly, I think if that means trading away a guy like Elias Pettersson, you better get something big in return. But like, I listen, I'm not a Canucks fan. I didn't come into the season with hopes that my boy Petey and Miller were going to be best buds and Demko was going to come back and lead us to the cup, right? And Quinn Hughes is going to continue to be one of the best defensemen in the league. So it's probably easier for me to say. But if at this point saving the season and potentially the future of the Canucks requires dishing Pettersson for a quality return, I might be the guy to pull the trigger, but at the same time, like I had mentioned just a few moments ago, we haven't seen the envisioned 24-25 Canucks play a month, let alone a week.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Beginning of the season, we had Besser out, Pedersen's been out, Miller's been out. Feels like half this team has been out at some point in this season. And Quinn Hughes was actually one of the last people who was healthy for a while there. I think the only guy who hasn't been out basically this season is like DeBrusque and Garland. Those are the only guys I can think of out of our core who haven't been hurt. Um, so yeah, I agree. We haven't seen this team play. We haven't seen them like gel as a whole. We've seen players gel together, like we've seen DeBrusque and Pedersen play pretty well together, but we haven't seen this team gel together as a complete unit. And I think even though a lot of them are returning from last year, when you have the new additions and when it's just season to season, you need to be able to have your time as a complete unit. So hopefully they're just saving all their health for the playoffs, but that's a bit of a pleasant thought.
Yeah, I think it's one of those. I think they definitely need to make a move because you can't bank on everybody being healthy for all 16 playoff games that you guys are going to play. Wink, wink. Uh,
16. Hold on.
yeah, do the math there. Go Canucks, go. But
Yeah.
I think there is a move that needs to be made. I think like look at a team like Buffalo. Playoff aspirations not there. RFA and Bowen Byram probably not going to sign another defenseman to a big long-term contract. I mean, they might, and it might just be more, I think, poor asset management. But I think it makes sense. And there's other options out there. There's other teams. Obviously, I'm very well in tune with the Sabres, so I know. But let me end it with this, Abby. What would it take for the Sabres to get Pettersson out of Vancouver in your mind? And then
Hmm.
maybe give me in the mind of Alvin.
Okay. In my mind, it starts. Okay. Okay.
You have 2 untouchables, by the way. The 2 untouchables are Darlene and Tage. Everybody
Okay.
else is available.
I wasn't even thinking of Darlene because like I'd love Darlene, but I think it just doesn't make sense for you guys to get rid of him, so I wasn't even gonna go there. Thompson was someone where I was like, you know what, that'd be closer to a 1-for-1. But it also doesn't make sense for you guys to give him up either. So that makes sense. So let's look at your next best players, right? After Darlene and Thompson, your next best players are probably we're looking at Tuck. We're probably looking at Byram and Power. Yeah, and then Cousins as well is like up there. So I think if you're going for a package for Pedersen, I think it has to start with Bo and Byram. Then where you want to go from there depends on what the Canucks want to do this season. Are they retooling? Are they rebuilding? Or are they going all in? If you're retooling, then maybe you look at someone else rather than Cousins. Maybe you look at someone a little younger. Maybe you look at a Kulik. Maybe you look at a Zach Benson. Now, that's very, very risky because you're trading an established 100-point forward who's received Selke considerations for a prospect, which, again, a little dicey. Yes, you're still getting Bo and Byram, but it gets a little dicier there. So if you're going to play it safe, I think what you do is you grab Dylan Cousins, Bo and Byram, and then maybe one other small piece like Jason Zucker, and maybe a prospect. I think that's kind of what you look at.
Small piece in that kind of deal. I feel like
What's his value? A second-round pick, a third-round pick?
Yeah, I don't personally know what a 30-point or a 0.75 point per game 33-year-old winger is going for nowadays. Yeah, I feel like Buffalo would look for, maybe like a Nils Hoglander type of player for a guy like Zucker. So I mean, we'll see. I feel like we're really close though. I like the idea of Byram and Cousins, and then maybe giving you one of our prospects for a guy like Pedersen, maybe throwing a Hoglander and a pick, like that kind of thing, like just a massive, massive trade. I think we're both on the same page when it comes to this, that, I like Byram, like Cousins a lot, but I think at this point, the Sabres have to do something, right? Tage. I mean, honestly, Kulik is looking amazing as a center, which is a surprise, right? He played a little bit of center. But I looked at it more of him as a winger, but then we got rid of Middlestat, and now we might get rid of Cousins. So, Kulik could be that perfect 3C, or, you move Thompson to the wing. I don't like that exactly, but, Pedersen, Thompson, Kulik, McLeod is a pretty solid center core in my eyes, because you got two superstars and veterans, and then McLeod
isn't Thompson playing wing right now?
Yeah, technically, yeah. He played wing against Colorado and played wing against Vegas, I believe, on Cousins' wing. And that line looked pretty good, honestly. So I don't view Thompson as a winger because, he became a superstar when Granato moved him to center. So I don't know how much I want him back on the wing. But at the same time, less defensive responsibility, more offensive, opportunity for Tage Thompson. Yeah, right? Like, get him in the offensive zone, get him the puck, get him to shoot, get him to dangle, right? Like, that's where he's best. I don't know how much I want him coming all the way down to the blue paint to help there when he could be, face-off dot to the top of the circle, and then all of a sudden you got a 6'6" speedster flying down with his shot. Like, that's dangerous. I think I'd rather have, Pedersen there, but obviously we're talking into fantasy land here. But again, I think Canucks fans, listen, I'm not down on Dylan Cousins. He's got the draft pedigree. He's got the ability. I think Dylan Cousins definitely is another prospect that the Sabres are very poorly handling. He was brought in with nobody ahead of him to really teach him exactly how to do things. And Tage Thompson, sure, is a better player, but that doesn't mean he's a more experienced, better teacher, been there, done that, right? And quite frankly, he's not that guy. So I feel like you give Cousins JT Miller, you get Cousins closer to home. Yes, I know. I think I said on the last podcast or 2 episodes ago that Whitehorse was moderately close to Vancouver. It's not. I looked it up on Google's Maps. That's my bad. I had no idea. But again, it's still closer than Buffalo. Mom's home cooking is a lot closer. But he's a little bit closer to home. At least, hey, I grew up, I know Vancouver. I'm sure he knows Vancouver. I'm sure he's visited Vancouver and stuff like that. So a little bit more familiar with the territory. He's under team control for you guys. 4 years at $7.1 million is definitely not bad for your second line center. He's making less than JT Miller. So there you go. There's that. And I think there's still an elite center in there. Now, I think, again, Sabres fans want to pitch him as, oh, he could be an elite two-way center. It's like, no, he could be an elite physical offensive center. Let's not confuse physical with two-way, because those are big differences. But I think Cousins is definitely somebody that if you're gonna get a center back from Buffalo in a Pettersson trade, because where there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, listen, we're talking about what is Vancouver asking for. I know you said that they squashed it, but there's definitely something going on up in the suites, up in the boxes, up in the offices there. So. I mean, listen, I would like it for you guys. I think it would be great. I'd love to watch Byram and Cousins play in Vancouver. I would immediately start tuning into more Canucks games because I still like these guys. I hate them because they're the Sabres right now and they do a bunch of dumb shit. But as a Canuck, I think they could be great for you guys. Plus some throw-ins either way. And I would honestly just love to see Pettersson. I would love to see a pulse down there at KeyBank Center of hey, we know we're last in the league. We said we're in #win-now mode all summer. We're in last place in the East. That is not what winning now looks like. So show me what you know how to win a Stanley Cup, Kevin Adams. He's literally quoted as saying, I know what it takes to win a Stanley Cup. Well, really? The team you built's in last place in the East. That's not where you want to be to win the Stanley Cup. So maybe try something else.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's a bit of a tone-deaf statement from Kevin Adams, considering the lack of success he's had in having the Sabres do just that. And I agree. I think it goes the other way as well, right? If Pettersson gets traded to the Sabres, I'll be cheering for Pettersson, or I'll be tuning into Sabres games. It's not like I hate these guys. I love these guys. These guys have given us an amazing last season. A lot of these guys, gave us an amazing bubble year as well during the pandemic. And I'm going to be cheering for them. And I really, really do hope, if they are not on this team, that they do well. Not against the Canucks, but I hope they do well all the other games they do, the 80 other games.
Yeah, I don't think we play again this season. Or do we? We might.
We do.
Okay.
I think it's the 3rd.
Oh, it's the 21st of January.
21st.
Wow, I had that. We're sandwiched between two Oilers games, so you guys are not even going to think about us. Holy crap.
I think you guys are going to sneak a little win there, if I were to guess.
Honestly, it's probably a trap game because you're at home against LA, at home against Edmonton, and then you're at home against us before you travel to Edmonton. So, we're going to be a little bug on the windshield of the Vancouver Canucks train. But oh my God. Oh, also, that's about it for me, man. I did want to get to this point, and I don't want to forget about it. There's two things. Darlene literally was quoted as saying, after I believe the Golden Knights game, was, quote, "We have to come to the realization that we can't be a young team anymore. We have to learn little things that all the vets know about, and we have to step up. We can't do this." He's literally saying we don't know what we're doing. We don't know what it takes to win. That is a direct thing of saying we are still a young team. We don't have veteran leadership. We don't, the vets know this stuff. We got to learn it too. And, he's right. But Kevin Adams, your captain, just said that in the press. Do something. Get a veteran. I don't care if it's Wayne Simmons again. Just freaking bring somebody in.
Somebody who knows how to win. Someone who's won a Stanley Cup.
Oh, and the other thing is, Sabres fans, I know I'm cramming this in at the very end. I should probably save this for next time, but we'll expound upon it a bit. We miss the net so much, dude. The amount of, our Corsi's great, but our expected goals and our actual goals are not great, and that's because we don't hit the net. They get blocked or they miss the net. Of the Sabres players that have taken over 150 shots, there is only one player that hits the net more than 50% of the time.
Whoa.
By the way, the league average forward goals plus shots on net, so shots that didn't get a goal that were saved, is 51%. So that's the league average. Obviously, you're not adjusting for shooting talent, right? Tage Thompson is an above-average shooter. Jordan Greenway is not an above-average shooter. But the only Sabres forward that has taken 150 shots or more and has over 50% of their shots hit the net is Dylan Cousins. So there you go, Vancouver. You're getting a gem.
There we go.
Yeah, Tage Thompson's at 45%. Darlene's at sub 45%. JJ Peterka's at 38%. Alex Tuck is about 47%. Owen Powers, 45%. Zucker is at 50%. So look at that.
There you go.
So, like, but that's my point. Like, they just got to hit the net, and it was a problem in November. It's been a problem all December, and we're in January, and it's still a problem. So I don't like Lindy. I don't know what he's doing, but we'll get to him in the next one unless something miraculous happens here. But yeah, so there's a couple things I wanted to get to. Anything else from you, Abby?
No, I think this next little stretch here, you mentioned there's a lot of games and like a close homestand. The Canucks go on the road. I think watching how the Canucks do over the next couple of games, because they are kind of on that teetering thing. They're in a wild card position, but seeing if they can pull through the next couple of games without Hughes and get, 3 points in the next 4 games, do something to show a sign of life. Or if it looks like, the season is over, how much value is there in a retool? I think it's something we can talk about next episode is, should the Canucks punt this year and do a retool? Do they have the cap space to do it? Can they acquire the right assets doing it? What is the benefit of that for the Canucks this season? I think if listeners want to tweet at us on X, if listeners have comments in the comment section, try and spark some ideas for the next podcast. I think that would be an interesting topic for us to cover, at least for the Canucks side, is what is the viability of a retool in this 2024-2025 season?
Yeah, I was gonna say it might be a little early, but I'm looking at the games between these two recording sessions. Montreal, who's been playing loose,
They've been good.
And you guys are going east, right? So that's a long trip over to Montreal, and that's the first game of the road trip, right? Who knows what's going to happen? Then you've got the Capitals; they're flying high.
They're hot.
Carolina, who's always been a good team, and then the Toronto Maple Leafs, who just got Austin Matthews back. And then after that, you've just got a light game against the Jets, a little old game against the Kings, and then you got the Edmonton Oilers. I mean, this stretch doesn't get easier, guys. So these next, I don't know how many games these are. These are 6 games. Yeah, this next 6 or 7 games is going to tell us a lot about the direction of the Canucks season, and to not have your stars during this. Like, this is tough. Like, you need Hughes back soon, and hopefully Demko, I think they said it was back spasms. Hopefully he can come back eventually.
Yeah,
like,
he should be okay.
Like, I think it's really going to matter. Like, this is going to be big. And then you've got Buffalo. So you can easily chalk up 2 points there. So if just when in doubt, you've got Buffalo on the schedule. But I look forward to an emergency pod about a trade, Abby, and this time both of us can be in on it. I mean, I don't expect the Sabres to do anything, so I can't wait to talk about where Pettersson went, and it's like Toronto or something like that.
I'll say one more again. Like, if I had things my way, we don't trade anybody, right? Maybe Höglander, if we can't get it going, if we can't if Talk can't use him properly and Höglander can't simplify his game, maybe it's Höglander. Outside of that, I don't want to see anyone from this core gone. I really hope they don't trade anybody. They work it out, because I think if they get the right defenseman, this team can make it to the Cup Finals. So
yeah, absolutely.
I think, or any potential trade, and I'm sure if something happens, we'll talk about it. But I don't want to see anyone get moved.
Yeah, and I think your team is really good. We see it on paper. It is a very good team. It's just been injured to heck. And I'm wondering why Vancouver's even letting it go out there with like Elliot Friedman. Like, nothing gets past to Elliot Friedman without like sign off from the front office, right? That dude wants to make sure all of his relationships are good. And like, somebody's giving him that, which is like, that's telling. Like, that means something. It's like with Woj when he was still tweeting for ESPN. Like, when Woj dropped a bomb, Woj dropped a bomb. Yeah, it's Chom's, right? So yeah, it's an Elliot Friedman bomb. So this is big. There's an actual ask. There is an ask, and there are interested parties, and it wouldn't shock me if something manifests. I hope it doesn't, because I think the core is really good. But if they there in the front office think that something needs to happen, and Tockett's like, yes, we need the locker room. I don't jive with Pettersson. I mean, who do you want more, Pettersson or Tocchet? Because that may be who's pulling the strings here. And if you lean into Tocchet, then sorry, Pettersson, but you don't have trade protection. So either way, it'll be interesting. It's a nervy time right now. I actually get excited talking about hockey because Team USA just won the gold medal. So congratulations to Brody Zeimer and what's Brody Zeimer and I'm pulling up his name, and Adam Kleber. He's the right-handed defenseman. Both Sabres prospects, and Konsta Helenius, our first-round pick, wins the silver with Finland, and Czechia takes home the bronze. So congratulations to all those boys. I love that tournament. I'm not super passionate about Team USA. I find it funny when Team Canada flounders, but we're going to see Team USA flounder.
As everyone does.
Yeah. Obviously, when the big favorite, the big bad wolf flounders, right? We love it. But congratulations to those guys. The future is bright in Buffalo. Just a few more prospects and we'll be there, Abby. But that is all the time I have for this one. Thank you guys for listening. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, RyeBread You can find the Expansion Bros podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Apple Music, Spotify, all of them. Not Apple Music, Apple Podcasts. But anyway, if you want to listen to podcasts on Apple Music, it's probably not going to work. So try Apple Podcasts instead. Make sure to follow us, subscribe us, and make sure to follow us on Twitter as well, at the Expansion Bros. We are so thankful that you guys are listening, and Sabres fans, I don't know how many of you are actually listening to this. I wonder if it's just Vancouver fans listening to me to wallow in sorrow for an hour every week, but I appreciate you guys listening. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you guys in the next one.
Peace.